Okay, so there's this nasal spray people are using instead of their anxiety meds right now, and they're telling me it calms them down without making them feel foggy or sedated. That is a big claim. And before you go and buy a bottle based on some testimonial you saw online, I want to walk you through what the actual research says because this one is genuinely interesting, but it is nowhere near as proven as people think it is. I'm Dina. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I read the study so you don't have to take some stranger's word for it. We're getting into Selank Nasal Spray, what it actually is, how it may work in the brain, what the evidence says about anxiety and focus, and who really needs to stay away from this one. Real talk is always free in here, so let's get into it. So let's start with where this thing even comes from. Selank is a synthetic peptide and is built from something called tufsin, which is a naturally occurring peptide involved in immune function. This wasn't some random wellness product someone threw together. It came out of the actual peptide research with a specific goal in mind, anxiety relief, without the heavy sedation you get from a lot of standard anxiety medications. Now, why the nasal spray form specifically? Peptides tend to do really poorly as pills because digestion just breaks them down before they can do anything. With a nasal spray, some of the compound may reach your central nervous system more directly, and it skips the first pass through the liver too. As for what it's actually doing in there, the research points to some effects on GABA receptors along with serotonin and dopamine pathways. Some of the discussion also brings up BDNF, which is a protein tied to learning and brain plasticity. Okay, quick translation for you. GABA is basically the main calming signal in your brain. Serotonin helps regulate mood. Dopamine shapes your drive, your reward system, and your focus. I don't want to oversell any one of these pathways though, because honestly, the full mechanism still isn't completely mapped out in humans. But the basic idea is there. It appears to nudge the systems tied to your stress response and how your brain performs under pressure. Here is why the spray gets so much attention. No injections, no pills to swallow. It just fits into a daily routine really easily. And for a lot of people, that alone is a big selling point. But here's the thing people are actually chasing with this one. They want to feel calm without feeling dulled. They don't want that sleepy, foggy feeling you get from a lot of standard anxiety medications. They want to feel like themselves, just less overwhelmed. And the nasal delivery lines up with the goal pretty well because it's quick, it's simple, and it's easier to dose in smaller amounts spread across the day. Okay. This is a section I really want you to pay attention to because there's a real difference between promising and proven. On the anxiety and stress side, earlier human studies, mostly out of Russia, suggest it may provide anxiolytic effects for generalized anxiety and tension while still preserving alertness. That detail matters a lot. Most people aren't trying to feel sleepy. They just want to feel less overwhelmed while staying sharp. On focus and mental clarity, Selank also gets placed in the nootropic category, but I want to be really clear about something here. That doesn't mean it turns you into a genius. What it might actually be doing is reducing stress interference. A calmer brain often just performs better. That's a completely different mechanism than a stimulant effect, and I think that distinction gets lost online constantly. Now, if you're comparing it to Semax, which I've covered before, the simple version is this. Selank tends to lean more calming, whereas Semax tends to lean more stimulating and focus-driven. People actually reach for Selank when anxiety is the main issue, and they look at Semax when they want more mental drive. That line isn't perfect, but it's a useful starting point. Here's my honest read on all of it though. Most of this data comes from small studies, older Russian research, animal work, and mechanism papers. That's enough to justify real interest. But it's not enough for me to promise you a predictable outcome. Dosing is where I want to slow down because this gets messy really fast. There is no universal protocol here, and products vary a lot from seller to seller. In clinic conversations and research summaries, people often mention a total daily range of about 500 to 1500 micrograms, usually split into 2 or 3 smaller doses. Some people start lower and adjust based on how they respond and how strong the specific product is. I want to be really clear though, that is not a self-prescribing blueprint. That's just a description of what gets talked about. The right amount, if there's even one for you, depends on the formulation, the reason you're using it, your own health status, and ideally a clinician guiding the whole thing. A couple practical notes if you're actually using a spray like this. Read the label closely and confirm the concentration per spray because bottles are not standardized. Prime it if the label says to, and administer it gently into each nostril while tilting your head slightly forward. And keep your nasal passage clear when you can because congestion or irritation can throw off both comfort and consistency. Storage matters too. Most of these sprays need to stay refrigerated somewhere around 36 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit, away from the light and never frozen. Most reports describe Selank as well tolerated, and that lines up with the limited human data available, but I want you to hear something important. Well tolerated is not the same thing as risk-free. The common side effects people mention are usually mild. Nasal irritation, headache, sore throat, fatigue, dizziness, or nausea. These tend to be short-lived when they do show up, though how sensitive your nervous system is can vary quite a bit person to person. Some people also mention an odd taste after spraying or some mild throat irritation from drip. And honestly, some of that discomfort may just come from the nasal route itself rather than the peptide. Now, here's something reassuring. I don't see strong evidence of addiction or withdrawal in the limited literature we have, and Selank doesn't appear to carry the same additive potential as benzodiazepines. That's actually one of the reasons it gets compared favorably to those drugs, but I still want you being cautious here. Long-term human data is genuinely still thin. As of right now, there are no large U.S. trials settling questions around daily use, long cycles, or safety across different patient groups. And product quality is a real weak spot too, since compounded and research market versions can differ a lot in purity, stability, and labeling. I'd be especially cautious here if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, managing cancer, an autoimmune disease, a major psychiatric illness, or a complicated medication list. In those situations, self-experimenting really doesn't make sense, and that's a conversation for a clinician to guide, not a bottle you order off the internet. I get why the longevity label keeps showing up around this one. Better stress control, less anxiety, support for cognition, all of that sounds like it fits under healthy aging, but that doesn't make this a proven anti-aging treatment. I have not seen solid evidence that Selank extends lifespan or directly slows aging in humans. The case for that is indirect at best, and animal stress biology is not the same thing as human longevity, no matter how promising the mechanism looks on paper. As for where the research stands overall, the picture is interesting but limited. Most of the human data still comes from small Russian studies, not large modern US or European trials, and there hasn't been any major FDA update on this recently. So here's my bottom line. Selank is genuinely interesting. The idea of anxiety relief and sharper thinking without heavy sedation is real. Compelling concept, and there's actual science behind why it might work that way. But the evidence base right now is early. The dosing isn't standardized and US approval simply isn't in place. If you're weighing this seriously, focus on three things: source quality, realistic expectations, and medical guidance. This may have real value for some people, but it's not a proven longevity fix, and I don't want you treating it like it is one. The full written breakdown is linked below with every source cited directly, plus more peptide and longevity content just like this on the blog. Drop your questions in the comments. I read every single one, and if you've tried this yourself, tell me how it actually went for you. Real talk is always free in here, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.